Hello and welcome. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching World Today on DD India. It's 6 p.m. in New Delhi, 8:30 in the morning in Washington, D.C. and 10:30 at night in Sydney. And we take a deep dive into Prime Minister Narendra Modi's push for internationalization of higher education in India. Now, India not only wants to attract foreign students, but also forge collaborations with universities abroad. Also on the show, the US lags other developed countries in vaccination rates. Now, this is despite having plenty of free vaccines on hand. And now the US is offering cash incentive to encourage people to get a vaccine. All that and much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi pushes for internationalization of higher education in India through the new Education Policy 2021. India not only wants to attract foreign students, but also forge collaborations with universities abroad. Australia deploys its military to enforce a COVID-19 lockdown in Sydney amidst a Delta outbreak, which began in June and has resulted in nearly 3,000 infections and 9 deaths. As the Dixie Fire rages in the U.S. state of California, 2 tornadoes leave a trail of destruction in Pennsylvania state. Climate change threatens to make extreme weather events worse across the globe. Stocks end higher on Wall Street, boosted by a robust U.S. earnings and forecast. Data shows that the U.S. economy grew solidly in the second quarter, putting the level of gross domestic product above its pre-pandemic peak. And good news for India at the Tokyo Olympics. Shuttler PV Sindhu and boxer Lavlina Borgohain stormed into the semis. A medal is assured for Lavlina. Right, let's get started. First up, the big news. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has pushed for internationalization of higher education in India through the new education policy. Now, India not only wants to attract foreign students, but also forge new collaborations with universities abroad. Now, as per the new education policy, top-performing Indian universities will be encouraged to set up campuses in other countries. Similarly, select universities, that is, those among the top 100 universities in the world, will be permitted to operate in India as well. A legislative framework facilitating such entry will be put in place, and such universities will be given special dispensation regarding regulatory, governance and content norms on par with other autonomous institutions of India. Now, as the policy calls for having foreign branch campuses set up in India as one of its key objectives, the report attempts to explain, with the help of a carefully designed model, the minimum potential inflow of international students that India can expect to achieve in the coming years. But its success is entirely dependent on India's agility in implementing student-friendly initiatives in different parts of the country. And one such example is the Study in India program. Now, this program has been very well appreciated for the simplicity it brings to the process of studying abroad. Furthermore, it promotes the soft power of the country, such as yoga and Ayurveda, among the diversity of courses offered in the country. Right, take a look at what one foreign student from Africa had to say about her experience of studying in India. Take a look.
I'm very thankful for the government of India to give me the opportunity to pass off my education here in this great university.
Right, and joining me for more on this story is my very special guest, Professor Ram Gopalrao, Director, Indian Institute of Technology, New Delhi. Professor Rao, welcome to World Today on DD India. Now, first up, I want to ask you to give our viewers a sense of the thought process behind this policy initiative, Professor Rao.
This is a very welcome step, something which we have all been looking forward to. There are two aspects to it. One is attracting international students to our campuses, and that's very important from multiple initiatives point of view. One of the things is, I think we must allow a top-notch faculty from all over the world to come teach our students, like any top US universities and other places too. So attracting top faculty to come and teach in our campuses is one reason why we would like to welcome international faculty. And the cultural diversity on our campuses are still very homogeneous. That is one issue. And though we have students from so many states, but in India, everybody goes through the same CBSE curriculum or ICSE curriculum. I think they all come similarly prepared in institutions like IITs. And I think having that cultural diversity, having students from all over the world to come and study with us is also one thing that needs to happen. The cultural diversity is important. And also the international rankings point of view. One of the main reasons why our top institutions are not figuring prominently in the international rankings is lack of that global presence. We, for example, at IIT Delhi, if you see, on other parameters like research impact and other things, we score very well. We score, sometimes up to 90 out of 100 and all that. But when it comes to international students, our score this year was 1 mark out of 100, 1 out of 100. If you look at international faculty, it was 1.7 out of 100. So I think that is where we are losing our presence in the top ranking. So I think by making our institutions become more global in their outlook, in their curriculum, in their educational offerings, in attracting international students, I think our students will develop that international footprint and eventually will figure among the top institutions in the world.
Indeed. Professor Rao, you spoke about faculty and curriculum. I'll come to that in just a bit. But let me first address the question of foreign students in India. Now, what does the policy initiative speak about attracting foreign students to come and study in India? Are there any incentives on offer, for instance?
There are. In fact, IIT Delhi is one of the institutions of eminence. Under that, we have a international PhD fellowship program. And we have offered 500 PhD fellowships to international scholars to come and study with us. And we are aggressively now looking for international students into the PhD program. And also there is a Government of India initiative for which IIT Delhi is the national coordinator, which is known as DIA, the DIA, that is the doctoral program in IITs for ASEAN students. In fact, Honorable Prime Minister launched that in 2018 as part of the ASEAN summit, where India, Government of India offered 1,000 PhD fellowships to ASEAN students to do PhD specifically in IITs. That's also another program which is happening. And IITs for some time now, for almost like 5 years, we have been conducting our JEE advanced examination in 5 countries outside India, at 5 places outside India. But JEE advanced is the most difficult exam by any standards. And though we have been conducting this exam at various places, not many international students have been able to qualify this exam and enter IITs. But in principle, in IITs at the BTech level, we have 10% supernumerary quota available for international students. But we say that you have to clear the same exam that Indian students clear. We don't want to change the admission norms for international students at any level. And at the undergraduate level, considering the competition that exists, for students to enter IITs, it's becoming very tough for any international student to enter our BTech program. So we are primarily looking for international students at the master's and PhD level, where we have some flexibility in admission norms.
Indeed. Professor Rao, let me come to the issue of foreign faculty now. Now, in your estimation, what can the government or India as a country do to attract foreign faculty to come and work and do research and also take courses in public and private universities alike?
We have been trying, in fact, again, IIT Delhi being an institution of eminence, some of these norms have been relaxed for us.
Okay.
And we have been aggressively looking for international faculty, but we haven't been very successful, I would say. Though we have today about 11 faculty who are not Indian passport holders. They come from various places in the world. And but again, our salary structures for a top researchers from US to come and teach in our teach in an IIT, for example, at our salaries, if you divide, if you take into account the dollar rupee kind of a conversion rate, it's not very attractive. So nobody is going to come from countries like US and all that. But one thing which we are targeting at IIT Delhi is there are so many people from neighboring countries who also go to US for their PhD. Let us say, students from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and many of these countries. They have studied in top universities in the US and other places. And many of them, instead of going back to their countries, if they wish to come to India, because India has traditionally been doing very well in higher education and IITs have been very well known all over the world. If they wish to come to IITs and teach here, we are also targeting some of these students. At IIT Delhi, we have made quite a few efforts. We visited many top institutions in the US. We addressed some of these people if they want to come to IIT and teach our students. I think some efforts are on, but these are all in a way new initiatives for us. 2 years ago, if you looked at any of our advertisements, it all used to start with only Indian nationals need apply. I think so the word has gone around all over the places that in India, for anyone to become a faculty, they have to be Indian nationals, and that is the general perception. So now that for the past couple of years we are targeting international faculty, but the perceptions need to change, and I think slowly it will happen. But at least in IITs we can do that. But there are multiple issues which are coming in the way. But I think slowly, I am confident, something like that might happen.
You make a number of valid points there, Professor. Another issue is the policy which is detailed in the policy document as well. Now, India wants foreign universities to set up campuses in India and also encourage Indian universities to venture abroad as well. Could you throw some light on this aspect of education policy?
In fact, IIT Delhi has a proposal, with the ministry for starting an international campus. We realize for IIT Delhi particularly, that's one way for us to break into the top 50 world rankings. Just imagine IIT Delhi starting a campus in a country abroad and admit students there who mostly...
So, Professor, have you identified a country?
We are talking to, right now, there is a proposal for Saudi Arabia.
Okay.
We are looking at doing that. That is the proposal which is pending with the ministry right now. So our approach is very simple. For example, if IIT Delhi is able to start a campus in Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia is also welcoming IITs. In fact, they have been writing to us. We have been talking with them. They want IIT Delhi to set up a campus there. They are willing to support such an initiative. Now imagine that campus in Saudi Arabia admits students from all over the world, right? We will not offer BTech program because IIT BTech programs would mean admissions will be done through the JEE Advanced and all that, but we will offer a BS program which is more internationally known. And imagine students from all over the world coming and doing BS there, and these students spend a year at IIT Delhi, as part of their exchange process. And every year, 1,000 of those students coming and studying at the main campus. And I think that way we will develop that international footprint, and people outside the country will get to know about our institutions. Our international rankings will go up, and the faculty we recruit there will be the same IIT quality faculty. But then they will also come from multiple nationalities, because the salaries we offer there need not be tied to the norms we have the main campus here, because they have to equally teach in that country. So with the salary structures there, we can now start to have faculty from all over the world again, and they can have joint appointments with the main campus. I think that will be a game changer. This is something
Absolutely.
we must do at this stage for IITs to, like I said, break into that top 50 kind of rankings.
Indeed.
This is the only way. Otherwise, doing the same thing over and over again, we're not going to get into the top 50 kind of rankings, and we need to do something very different, and that has to be the internationalization as an aggressive approach, particularly IIT kind of.
Indeed, something very different, says Professor Rao, out of the box, if I can amplify his sentiment there. And also, perhaps this is an idea whose time has come, so India, in my estimation, must seize the opportunity initiative to venture into uncharted territory, so to speak. But Professor Rao, coming back to the policy document itself, now another issue confronting students and faculty alike is courses on offer and curriculum, and standardization and credit systems in particular. So how suitable are the courses on offer for students from across the globe?
I think for IITs, that's not a problem.
Okay.
But at least at a place like IIT Delhi, you can see that a large fraction of faculty, 60 to 70% would have degrees from US and other places. We are well integrated with the US system particularly, and even with the European system. So I think our courses which are on offer are world standard. The kind of programs that we offer in AI, blockchain, or in cyber security, in all of these areas will be quite sought after for any one coming from any country. So I think for IITs that problem won't be there, but a small university in a remote place, may not be able to offer those sort of programs. But this is also something we need to realize. In India, we haven't allowed our top institutions to go out. Whereas you see, Indian institutions which now have some presence outside, these are mostly the private institutions, and these are also not the institutions which are like the IIT kind of a standard. So I think for even from the perception point of view, we need to allow our top institutions to first go out and set up campuses. Just as we want top institutions from outside to come and set up campuses here, we should also allow our top institutions, which happen to be today, IITs and the government funded institutions. I think some of them now we need to see what kind of policy changes we need to make so that these institutions can go and set up the same quality campuses outside, and then attract talent from all over the world to come and study there or teach there, and see how they can get associated with the main campuses on this in the country. I think some of these are initiatives that we need to do, but the NEP that way, the policy changes that are happening are all in that direction, and we need to see how it will work out. And next 1 to 2 years, if we don't do that, I think we would have again missed that bus.
Absolutely. So the challenge is not to miss the bus, as Professor Rao says. Professor Rao, when we talk about attracting talent, one related issue is the issue or the challenge of brain drain, as some people call it. People, students and faculty alike who venture abroad, overseas, and then they excel in their chosen field of specialization. And that's a big drain on Indian talent pool as well. So is there any possibility or incentive that IITs can offer to bring those people back so that they can contribute to Indian nation building as well? For instance, China is doing it, other countries are doing it, so why not India?
I think China is doing it very aggressively, and they have schemes where they want thousands of people, the Chinese nationals in top universities in the US, to come back and set up campuses. India has started doing that. There is a very interesting program that the Department of Science and Technology offers today, which is known as VAJRA, VAJR, which is an acronym for visiting academic researchers kind of a thing. There, if an Indian national or even a foreign national, who is very well known in a particular area, wants to come back to the country and wants to get associated with a premier institution in India, Government of India gives that person, a salary of $15,000 US in the first 1 month and another $10,000 for the next 2 months. The person can set up a laboratory here, and receive salary on par with the international standards. And that Bajra scheme is very popular now. Many people are coming back, and there is also a GAN program, the Global Initiative for Academic Networking kind of thing, which is offered by the Ministry of Education, where again thousands of international scholars come and teach our students. I think some of these initiatives have started in the last few years, but I think for us one of the things we are looking for is for these people to permanently move back to the country, and which is also happening. In IITs there are at least 60% of our faculty who are such kind of people, but they don't really go to the universities still because of the autonomy issues, because of the freedom, because of funding, all of those kind of concerns. But I think in IITs we do attract many of them. But one thing which is also changing is 10 years ago, a large chunk of IIT students used to go abroad. So we used to worry about the brain drain and all that. If you look at the last 5-year data, less than 5% of IIT Delhi students have gone abroad. Less than 5%.
Let me pause. Let me make you pause, Professor Rao. Are you saying that in the last 5 years, less than 5% IIT graduates have ventured abroad? Am I correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
As compared to?
As compared to, let's say, the previous decade.
Okay.
So this has happened.
And what might be the reasons therefore, Professor Rao?
The main reason is the opportunities in the country.
Right.
Why were these students going abroad earlier? Because of the opportunities in the country, and everybody complains about the brain drain. But at that time, if you talk to some of those people, they say, is it the brain in the drain versus brain drain kind of a thing? I think that was the kind of situation that we had at that time. But now things have changed. Now country offers a lot of opportunities for some of them. If you even see the startup ecosystem today, many IITians, any unicorn you take, IIT Delhi, half the unicorns that you see in India today have come out of IIT Delhi alumni. 50% of them have just come out of one single institute in the country, which is IIT Delhi. And earlier, many of them would have gone abroad, gone to US and done all of that there. I think, all the startup ecosystem that you see in the country, there are IITians behind that. And that's also happening because instead of going abroad, now they are staying back in the country and doing some of this. And also lots of multinationals, their largest centers after their native country, they all happen to be in India right now, whether you take Intel or Hyundai or Samsung or any of them. I think because they get world-class facilities to work with India, many of them are also staying back in the country.
Absolutely. Right. On that note, Professor Rao, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights with us and our viewers at home and abroad. Appreciate it. Right, moving on to another news we are tracking here on World Today. India's envoy to China, Vikram Misri, on Friday said a more sustainable path is required to address current realities in a pandemic-hit world. The ambassador, who was among the speakers at an international forum in Beijing, drew particular attention to the plight of students who had been hit hard by the controls that the pandemic had brought up. He said travel restrictions had hurt the students particularly very badly.
I heard speakers talk of a post-pandemic world. I don't want to sound overly pessimistic, but I think the first step on the way to a post-pandemic world is to learn to live with the world as it is now. This pandemic may be the most serious one in living memory, but it should not be seen as the last one. It stands to reason then that we need a more sustainable path in addressing current realities and in facing up to future ones. A path that is not dependent on repetitive and massive lockdowns, crushing travel restrictions that have impacted students particularly badly, and an intense undercurrent of suspicion about everything.
Ambassador Misri also expressed his views on various other relevant contemporary issues at the forum, which was organized by a prominent Chinese think tank called the Center for China and Globalization. The ambassador highlighted the current lack of trust and transparency in the international sphere and recalled Foreign Minister Jaishankar's observation about how the pandemic had induced narrower definitions of self-interest around the world. Now, calling for greater global cooperation in an environment where countries were concerned about risks to their critical supply chains and worried by their over-dependence in certain areas, The ambassador advocated the need to stabilize supply chains and make them more resilient by investing in diversification and redundancy.
COVID-19 has also moved the needle in the direction of risks as opposed to opportunity. And suddenly, risk aversion is at an all-time high. Many have been forced to see in stark relief the importance of reliable supply chains, and now everyone feels the need for strategic autonomy to address overdependence. And the discourse is slowly but steadily shifting towards the need to create greater global capacities by promoting decentralized globalization and establishing resilient supply chains to de-risk the world economy.
And Ambassador Misri clarified that the solution was not to turn away from globalization, but in addressing the challenges facing it and taking into account the capacities and capabilities of all actors in a multipolar and shifting environment. Now, noting the importance of trust and transparency, the ambassador said if all the pandemic ended up doing was to enhance suspicions among countries and damage cooperative habits built up over time, then not only would human lives have been lost, but humanity itself would stand diminished.
Can be done without harming the essential global nature of our interdependence. A beginning can perhaps be made by addressing specific pockets of dangerous dependence and seeing how more redundancy can be built into global supply chains and trade linkages. Maybe we can find ways to support shorter, more efficient and diversified supply chains, enhance trade facilitation and reduce the costs of trade. We also need more cooperation on sharing advanced technologies, collaboration in vaccine and pharmaceutical production, capacity building and transparency in health information. If anything I have said suggests a turn away from globalization, let me dispel that notion and say that globalization is deep and pervasive and will continue to be a force to contend with. What COVID has thrown into stark relief are some of the particular risks of its current incarnation. The task before us is therefore to de-risk. We need to be aware that the world is both more multipolar and also going through a rebalancing. There are more players out there with capabilities whose full potential needs to be leveraged. An architecture of decentralized globalization based on multiple supply chains and more engines of growth will strengthen global resilience and confidence and provide the redundancy enabling the world to face the next pandemic better. Finally, going forward, trust and transparency need to be the watchwords. If all that the pandemic would have done is to enhance suspicion and damage.
And my colleague Anshuman Mishra reports from Beijing that ambassadors from other countries such as Brazil, Egypt, Indonesia and Australia also echoed similar sentiments and called for more trust in global systems and reducing barriers in mobility and global trade. Right, let's now bring you up to date on the COVID situation around the world. Now, the world continues to battle against COVID-19 pandemic. So far, more than 197 million people have tested positive for the coronavirus. 178 million people have recovered. The deadly virus has claimed 4.21 million lives globally. The US remains the worst affected. More than 35.5 million people have been infected with the virus in the US, and over 628,000 Americans have died so far. Moving on, Indian Railways will send a third Oxygen Express train to Bangladesh. It will carry 200 metric tons of liquid medical oxygen in 10 containers. The train will leave Tata in Chakradharpur Division, Southeastern Railway, for Binapol in Bangladesh. The containers will significantly augment the oxygen reserve of Bangladesh. The first Oxygen Express train with 200 metric tons of oxygen arrived in Bangladesh on 24th July. The second, carrying similar tonnage, left on Tuesday. Bangladesh reported the second highest COVID infection in a single day on Thursday. The government there has lowered the vaccination age to 25 years. A total of 15,271 new cases were detected on Thursday, taking the total number of infected people to over 122,000. Now, Friday is the 8th day of lockdown in Bangladesh. Moving on, President Joe Biden of the U.S. has urged local governments to set new rules requiring federal workers to provide proof of vaccination or face regular testing, mask mandates and travel restrictions. The measures are Biden's latest attempt to spur reluctant Americans to get vaccinated as the Delta variant of the coronavirus surges nationwide, infecting unvaccinated people in particular. The U.S. lags other developed countries in vaccination rates despite having plenty of free vaccines on hand.
As more people get vaccinated, we are better protected as a nation to continue reopening safely and responsibly. We are not fully out of the woods yet, because what is happening in America right now is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Let me say that again. It's a pandemic of the unvaccinated. There are about 90 million Americans who are eligible to get the shot, but haven't gotten it yet. As I just mentioned, nearly all of the cases, hospitalizations and deaths due to COVID-19 today are from unvaccinated people.
Meanwhile, the U.S. Treasury Department said state, local and U.S. territorial governments will be able to dip into a $350 billion coronavirus aid to give $100 each to all newly vaccinated Americans so as to boost inoculation rates. Now, Biden's pandemic strategy is coming under scrutiny as the Delta variant spreads and many Americans resist taking the vaccine.
I'm calling on all states and local governments to use funding they have received, including from the American Rescue Plan, to give $100 to anyone who gets fully vaccinated. I know the paying people who get vaccinated might sound unfair to folks who've gotten vaccinated already. But here's the deal. If incentives help us beat this virus, I believe we should use them.
And across the Atlantic, France has called England's quarantine measures for French travelers extremely discriminatory. France's Europe Minister Clément Bon said the measures are not based on science. Now, England had earlier allowed fully vaccinated visitors from European countries other than France to arrive without needing to quarantine. But the new measures will come into effect from next week. Meanwhile, the British government has said it is keeping quarantine rules for travelers from France because of the presence of the Beta variant there. And down under, Australia's largest city of Sydney on Friday reported a slight easing in locally acquired cases of COVID-19 amid a further tightening of restrictions in the worst affected suburbs, with the military summoned to help enforce lockdown rules. Millions in Sydney began one of the country's harshest lockdowns since the pandemic began on Friday. This after nearly 5 weeks of increasingly tough restrictions failed to quell an outbreak of the highly infectious Delta variant. Although cases dipped for the first time in nearly a week, State Premier Gladys Berejiklian warned cases could again rise due to the growing number of people positive with the Delta strain moving around in the community. Meanwhile, Israel will begin offering a third shot of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine to people aged over 60. It's a world first in efforts to slow the spread of the highly contagious Delta variant. President Isaac Herzog was to be the first to receive the booster. Israel was a world leader in the vaccination rollout, with many seniors getting their shots in December, January and February. But since the emergence of the Delta variant, the health ministry has twice reported a drop in the vaccine's efficacy against infection and a slight decrease in its protection against severe disease. Now, the booster campaign, with shots administered by health maintenance organizations, will effectively turn Israel into a testing ground for a third dose before approval by the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. Around 57% of Israel's 9.3 million population has been vaccinated. Around 160 people are hospitalized with severe symptoms, and daily new infections have spiked to more than 2,000, up from a handful of cases per day a few months ago. Moving on, UK's UN ambassador warned on Thursday that half of Myanmar's 54 million people could be infected with COVID in the next 2 weeks, as Myanmar's envoy called for UN monitors to ensure an effective delivery of vaccines. Myanmar has been in chaos since the military ousted an elected government led by Aung San Suu Kyi on 1st February, with protests and fighting between the army and newly formed militias. The US, the UK and others have all imposed sanctions on the military rulers over the coup and repression of pro-democracy protests in which hundreds have been killed. Myanmar state media reported on Wednesday that the military ruler is looking for greater cooperation with other countries to contain the coronavirus. Infections in Myanmar have surged since June, with 4,980 cases and 365 deaths reported on Wednesday.
The COVID situation is of particular concern. The coup has resulted in a near total collapse of the healthcare system, and healthcare workers are being attacked and arrested. The virus is spreading through the population very fast indeed. By some estimates, in the next 2 weeks, half of the population of Myanmar could be infected with COVID.
In order to have smooth and effective COVID vaccination and providing humanitarian assistance, close monitoring by the international community is essential. As such, I would like to request the United Nations, in particular the Security Council, to urgently establish a UN-led monitoring mechanism for effective COVID vaccination and smooth delivery of humanitarian assistance, as well as for leaving no one behind.
Now, Haiti, which plunged into political turmoil by the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse this month, has battled the pandemic against a backdrop of scant medical resources, lack of vaccines and simmering street violence. Haiti's health ministry reported on 6 July nearly 19,400 infections and 487 deaths. But the numbers have not been updated since, and many experts are skeptical of them. Now, vaccination rates too are among the lowest in Haiti. This week, St. Luke Foundation for Haiti is scheduled to begin administering some of the country's first publicly distributed coronavirus vaccines, following a 500,000 dose donation from the US government via the COVAX Global Vaccine Program aimed at boosting inoculations in poor countries. And the coronavirus pandemic ravages Russia too. The country has registered an all-time high in the number of fatalities daily. Now, Russia, with a population of over 146 million, has reported more than 6.2 million cases. The death toll stands at more than 156,000. Right, shifting focus to another news we are tracking here on World Today. The world is battling extreme weather events, and climate change threatens to make things worse. From the US and Brazil in the Americas to Turkey and Myanmar in Asia, the vagaries of weather are leaving people stunned and speechless in more ways than one.
The world has been bearing the brunt of climate change for quite some time, with various countries witnessing adverse weather events. US, a vast landmass, is experiencing adverse events of different nature in two different places. While the Dixie Fire is still raging in Northern California, 2 tornadoes left a trail of destruction in Pennsylvania. Between 1 and 3 inches of rain had fallen across the region in a short time on Thursday. The vagaries of weather are leaving the man stunned and speechless in more ways than one. Climate change is triggering rare events, the likes of which a part of Brazil faced on Wednesday. An unusual snowfall lashed southern part of the nation. Temperatures fell as rare snowfall overnight in the global agricultural powerhouse threatened coffee, sugarcane and orange crops. The cold wave brought snow and cold rains to at least 13 cities. Meanwhile, wildfire in Turkey continues to cause destruction, with death toll rising to 4. Fire crews continue to battle blazes that burn down homes and force people to evacuate settlements and beach resorts. More than 60 wildfires have erupted across 17 provinces. On the other hand, days of heavy rainfall have pounded Rohingya refugee camps in southern Bangladesh, destroying dwellings and sending thousands of people in community shelters. The adverse events have made the man get up and take notice of the climate change and scramble for mitigation efforts. Perhaps that is the reason that the rich and developed nations are also seriously working to that effect. Bureau Report, DD India.
Right, take a look at what else is making news around the world in our News at a Glance segment.
In the United States, the raging Dixie Fire has burned through swaths of Northern California as firefighters struggle to contain one of the largest wildfires in the history of the states. In Indiana Falls, charred vehicles and destroyed structures were all that remained as the fire ripped through the area. The fire has consumed almost 2.21 lakh acres, while around 23% has been contained. The conflagrations in the US West, marking a heavier than normal start of the wildfire season, have coincided with record-shattering heat that has baked much of the region in recent weeks and caused hundreds of deaths. In Turkey, rescue efforts were underway in the southern town of Bodrum, where plumes of smoke were rising in the sky. 3 people are reported to have died since the fires broke out, and over 100 others required medical attention. Hotels and villages in the area were evacuated, and in many towns along the southern coast, firefighters and civilians tried to put out the blaze from fields, trees and homes. The Turkish Minister of Agriculture said that bringing the blaze under control might take time. 2 tornadoes touched down in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, collapsing the roof of a car dealership and injuring several people. Authorities were responding to several reports of injuries but could not give a total number of casualties. A local newspaper reported that more than 8,000 homes and businesses were left without power by the storm. The National Weather Service said rain between 2.5 and 5 centimeters had fallen across the region during a short span of time on Thursday afternoon. It has also issued flash flood warnings in parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. It also urged motorists to stay off the roads until the heavy weather had passed. Hundreds of Syrian volunteers assist Germany to deal with most devastating floods in 60 years. Germany, which lost at least 180 lives in the flooding earlier this month, opened its borders in 2015 to more than 1 million migrants, many of them Syrians, fleeing war and poverty. Volunteers help to clean homes and renovate them, drawing on their experience with catastrophes in their homeland to help the country that took them in. The floods have shaken up the political agenda before a national election in September, raising uncomfortable questions about why Europe's largest economy was caught flat-footed. According to a recent survey, 2/3 of Germans believe that federal and regional policymakers should have done more to protect communities from flooding. Former US Senator Carl Levin of Michigan had passed away at the age of 87. Levin was a long-serving Democratic leader on national security issues who strenuously opposed the Iraq War and investigated US detainee abuse while fighting corporate fraud. In Guatemala, thousands of people thronged streets demanding the resignation of President Alejandro Yamatei after the firing of a well-known anti-corruption prosecutor. Protesters blocked roads across the Central American country, set fire to tires and threw paint over police deployed to protect government buildings. The protests have stirred up in Guatemala since Attorney General Maria Porras last week removed anti-graft fighter Juan Francisco Sandoval as head of Special Prosecutor's Office Against Impunity. Peruvian President Pedro Castillo sworn in for a second time in front of thousands of people during a symbolic ceremony. Foreign delegations and heads of state attended the ceremony, including Chilean President Sebastián Pinera and Bolivian President Luis Arce. During the event, Castillo also named Guide Bellido, a member of his Marxist party, as Prime Minister in an indication of the pressure likely to be brought to bear on the new head of state by the far-left party that backed him. World Today Desk, DD India.
Right, on to Wall Street now, where stocks held steady on Wednesday after the Federal Reserve hinted that it was getting closer to curtailing a key asset purchasing program that has helped juice the U.S. economic recovery. The S&P 500 ended with little change and slipped by 0.1% after Federal Reserve Chair Jeremy Powell said the central bank was still a way away from considering raising interest rates. The Nasdaq ended sharply higher, with shares of Google parent Alphabet Incorporated hitting an all-time high. The Dow Jones also pared losses. Investors have bet on strong corporate earnings, the economic rebound, and continued support from central banks' easy monetary policies. Let me now get you all the updates from the Tokyo Olympics. India's wait for a second medal at the Tokyo Olympics is finally over. Boxer Lavlina Borgohain wrote her name in history books by beating Chinese Taipei's Nian Chen in the women's welterweight quarterfinal 4-1. But no one knows what the exact color of the medal will be. Find out why in the next report.
Rising Indian boxer Lavlina Borgohain, a two-time World Championship bronze medalist, has become the talk of the town after assuring herself of a medal at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics in the welterweight category. She defeated Chinese Taipei Chen Yanqin by 4-1 in the quarterfinals. In boxing, losing semi-finalists also get the bronze medal. However, Lavlina will be aiming much higher. If she wins her semi-final bout, she will be competing for the gold and will be assured of at least a silver.
कोविड के वजह से मुझे मतलब एक तो पहला मेरा इटली का टूर था वो भी मुझे मिस हुआ और मुझे इंटरनेशनल कंपटीशन बहुत कम मिल रहा था क्योंकि कोविड के वजह से भी और कोविड के वजह से कंपटीशन बहुत कम ही हो रहे थे और मुझे कोविड हुआ इसलिए मतलब एक कंपटीशन तो मैंने मिस ही कर दिया एक इटली का टूर था और एक कंपटीशन मैंने मिस किया तो मैंने मतलब रिंग का जो कंपटीशन का फीलिंग है वो बहुत कम मिल रहे थे मुझे इसलिए मुझे स्पायरिंग की जरूरत थी कोविड के वजह से बहुत मतलब स्पायरिंग भी बहुत कम होते थे तो लेकिन मैंने सोचा कि मतलब अगर स्पायरिंग नहीं हो रहा है तो मैं उसको कैसे दूसरी तरफ से ठीक कर सकती हूँ और उसी तरह मैंने ट्रेनिंग किया और हमारे कोचेस में और मेरा मतलब सबके हेल्प के वजह से ही अच्छा कर पाई
Lavlina will now be up against the reigning world champion Busenaz Sürmeneli of Turkey in the semi-finals. Union Minister for Sports and Youth Affairs Anurag Singh Thakur lauded Lavlina Borgohain for her tremendous performance at the Tokyo Olympics.
जो भारत का एक और मेडल पक्का हुआ है मैं तो यही कहूंगा 130 करोड़ भारतीय शुभकामनाएं भेजते हैं कि आप गोल्ड मेडल जीत कर आए और देश को आपसे बहुत सारी उम्मीदें हैं और बाकी भी जितने इवेंट्स हमारे बचते हैं उसमें हमारे खिलाड़ी शानदार प्रदर्शन करें ऐसी हमारी उम्मीद है
भारत सरकार की तरफ से तो ये सब मिला है फेडरेशन ने जो जितना ट्रेनिंग हुआ है वो जितना वो बाहर में किया है इंटरनेशनल जो गेम खेला है सब तो हम लोग घर से नहीं देते वो सरकार देते थे और फेडरेशन देते थे और इस उम्मीद से मैं बोल रहा हूँ जो जितने हैं उनके पीछे सबको मैं बधाई देना चाहती हूँ
As she basks in the glory of her achievement, here's a look at her incredible journey so far. Lavlina belongs to the Baramukhia village in Golaghat district of Assam. She started as a kickboxer. 23-year-old first displayed her boxing skills at Sports Authority of India trials at her primary school. It was during the trials that she was noticed by Padam Boro, who started coaching her in 2012. She would later start taking lessons from India's chief women's boxing coach, Shiv Singh.
मोहम्मद अली का मुझे जो वो खेलते हैं उनका लॉन्ग डिस्टेंस मूवमेंट में ये सब देखती हूँ हाँ ये है कि हर बॉक्सर अलग अलग होता है अलग अलग मतलब तरफ से उनके लिए खेलना पड़ता है कोई भी मतलब दो बॉक्सर सेम नहीं हो सकता है मैं मोहम्मद अली का कुछ चीज फॉलो करती हूँ जैसे उनका फुटवर्क उनका पंच लॉन्ग पंच तो हाँ उसको देखती हूँ मैं ओलंपिक से पहले मैं एक दो बार हाँ वीडियो देखा था मैंने
Let's take a look at her major achievements. Assured medal at Tokyo Olympics, bronze in 2021 Dubai Asian Championship, bronze in 2019, Ulan-Ude World Championship, bronze in 2018, New World Championship, bronze in 2017, Ho Chi Minh City Asian Championship, Arjuna Award 2020. India's previous boxing medals have come through Vijender Singh in 2008 and MC Maricom in 2012. Both of them had won bronze, and Borgohain would look to better that. Sports Desk, DD India.
Meanwhile, reigning badminton world champion PV Sindhu sailed into the women's singles semi-finals with a straight game win over Japan's Akane Yamaguchi. The Indian shuttler sealed a 2-0 win against Yamaguchi, winning the match 21-13, 22-20. The 26-year-old Indian, who won a silver in the Rio 2016 Olympics, defended brilliantly. She rode on an attack to outclass the 4th-seeded Yamaguchi in the 56-minute clash. Sindhu will next face the winner of the other quarterfinal between Thailand's Ratchanok Intanon and Chinese Taipei's Tsai Zhu-ying. The 6th-seeded Indian came into the match with a 11-7 head-to-head count against the Japanese, whom she had last beaten at the All England Championship in March this year. And Union Sports Minister Anurag Singh Thakur tweeted that the match between PV Sindhu and Japan's Akane Yamaguchi was thrilling. He said it was a superb game. And India's steeplechase athlete Avinash Sable creates a new national record in the men's 3,000 meter steeplechase event, clocking 8 minutes 18.12 seconds in his heat to finish 7th. He broke his earlier national record of 8 minutes 20.2 seconds. The top 3 in each of the 3 heats and next 6 fastest athletes across all the qualifying heats qualify for the final, and Sable is unexpected to make that cut. Women's world number 1 archer Deepika Kumari booked her spot in the quarterfinals by beating Xenia Tarova of Russian Olympic Committee 6-5 following a shoot-off. Right, time now for our Beyond Headlines segment. Take a look.
Climate change continues to batter the world, and the situation in Ecuador is no different. At one of Ecuador's oldest flower farms, workers are planting hemp on land that were traditionally used for roses, making a bet that selling cannabinoid products will help offset the decline in flower sales caused by the pandemic. Declining sales spurred by the coronavirus outbreak dealt a heavy blow to Ecuador's flower sector, one of the Andean nation's traditional export industries, leaving farms cutting output or seeking to reinvent themselves. While restaurants and bars in South Korea continue to bear the brunt of COVID-19 pandemic, Olympic season has brought some good news for the delivery restaurants and takeaway kitchens. Many people are these days preferring to order delivery while watching the Olympic Games. Places that offer food delivery services have their hands full, say restaurant owners in South Korea. They are bombarded with orders these days, sometimes more than they can handle. In China, visitors enjoy bungee jumping from the world's highest bungee jumping glass bridge. The 430-meter high glass-bottomed suspension bridge in China's Hunan province is a popular tourist attraction famous for sandstone pillars and peaks extending into the clouds. Visitors to the Zhangjiajie Grand Canyon Glass Bridge can take a leap from a height of 260 meters, a stomach-churning way to take in the views of the surrounding Wulingwan Wilderness, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The bridge opened last year after a COVID-19 induced closure. China's Wulong Nature Reserve Panda Center has welcomed a chubby panda cub weighing 249 grams. It is believed to be the heaviest captive-bred giant panda cub in the world. The cub was born on 26th of July in the center in southwest China's Sichuan province and is in healthy condition. Indonesia has become Asia's epicenter of the COVID-19, facing the worst outbreak, with health infrastructure of the country scrambling to save lives. Amid the crisis, a group of volunteers has been pedaling through the streets of Semarang to deliver medicines to COVID-19 patients in home isolation. The 35-year-old Arhaman Surya Atmaja is part of the volunteer group of cyclists who stops at a pharmacy to pick medicines for people in home isolation. In Canada, a giant hot air balloon of Dutch artist Van Gogh was being inflated in a bid to promote the reopening of the immersive Van Gogh exhibit. The balloon, which stands 91 feet tall, has become a center of tourist attraction in Canada. Tourists throng not only to witness the blowing of the balloon but also the exhibition. Just a 15-minute drive from Midtown Manhattan is a private swimming pool that is available pretty much to anyone who wants to rent it. Adorned with a floating pink flamingo and surrounded by lush plants and enough poolside seating for a small sports team, Carmen Sanchez rents her backyard oasis by the hour on the website Swimply. Swimply calls itself the Airbnb of private swimming pools and has staked its claim in the sharing economy. Cars, streets and highways were covered with snow in the south region of Brazil after strong snowfalls on Wednesday night. Excited families and tourists used the opportunity to play in the snow, build snowmen and take pictures. More than 40 cities in the state of Rio do Sul had winter precipitation and at least 33 municipalities reported snowfall. World Today Desk, DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.